September 1912. Adolf Hitler is homeless, wandering the streets of Vienna, a failed artist. World War I hasn't even begun. Just 25 years later, he would become the most powerful man in the Eastern Hemisphere, Führer of the German Reich, gracing full control of mainland Europe. From his joining of the original German Workers' Party to his final days in suicide beneath the Reich Chancellery, this video will focus on Adolf Hitler's life, strolling through a myriad of different topics via Iceberg format, beginning relatively common and sinking lower and lower into more obscure stories and facts. We begin with National Socialism, the model that Hitler used for his political party, the National Socialist German Workers' Party, abbreviated NSDAP, known by most Western countries as the Nazi Party. National Socialism, the ideology itself, was circulating in Germany in the 1920s, and Hitler believed the tandem of pure nationalism directly off of the embarrassing Treaty of Versailles in combination with social programs targeting the middle class would appeal to people. Socialism, the economic model, gives the regime more control of the economy. Hitler himself did not believe in socialism or Marxism, but he understood the way in which a socialist model could be used as a political tool to ascend to leadership. Of course, the nationalist part is derived from pure loyalty to the country and its leader. The combination of nationalism and socialism allowed for a regime to take over all facets of politics, including military and economic control, which were granted to the NSDAP. Hitler was famously a soldier during World War I as part of the Bavarian Army lasting from 1914 to 1918. Hitler was assigned as a dispatch runner, communicating messages on foot to various command posts. The job was described as dangerous, although it did keep Hitler slightly protected behind the front trenches. Hitler did sustain several injuries during his time in combat, getting hit with shrapnel in 1916 and being temporarily blinded by mustard gas in 1918. That experience would prove critical, as it later shaped Hitler's feelings towards chemical warfare during World War II. Germany also surrendered during his recovery from the mustard gas injury. Hitler received Iron Cross First Class in 1918 and was described as loyal and devout to Germany. Interestingly, his superiors did not view him as a potential leader based on his personality and job during the war. NSDAP was the party abbreviation for Adolf Hitler's National Socialist German Workers' Party, founded in 1920. The title combined nationalism with socialism, giving a dual purpose from a political sense. The abbreviation was rarely used by the Nazis, as it's a mouthful to say in German, with many people inside of Germany referring to the party as the Hitler Movement. The Nazis didn't naturally call themselves Nazis. The term was viewed as derogatory in Germany and actually predates the 1930s. It was not used by the Reich. The party abbreviation was liked by Hitler, who viewed it as organized. Nazi salute, sometimes called the Roman salute or Hitler salute, involves a straight right arm fully extended raised at a 45-degree angle, with the arm returning sharply to its side at the end. The salute was done as a sign of loyalty to Hitler. The Nazis' use of the salute mainly comes from fascist Italy, who in the early 1920s adopted it under the idea that it came from ancient Rome. The idea of an ancient Roman salute is actually unsubstantiated. Hitler had a great deal of respect for Mussolini and took the salute from Italy, sharpening it in a more authoritarian, orderly lens. In 1923, when the Nazis started prominently using the salute, it was originally a slightly different variation, but by 1925, the uniform 45-degree straight arm raise was fully in place. Nuremberg rallies were massive events held in Nuremberg, Germany that consisted routinely of audiences above 100,000 people. These rallies happened in the mid-1930s. Nuremberg was picked as a place of historical significance located in southern Germany, also known as a Nazi stronghold. The city made logistical sense. The rallies were held once a year, normally in early September. Positioned at Zeppelin Field and the surrounding area, the Nazis were said to have hosted rallies that would reach attendances above 500,000 people, with the largest one being around 750,000. The Nazi rally grounds were part of a greater Nuremberg site, which was to include an indoor and outdoor stadium. Much of the site was never finished before World War II. The rallies had immense impact on nationalism within Germany, allowing Hitler and his lead architect, Albert Speer, the ability to propagandize them in a way that was unique at the time. Mein Kampf was Adolf Hitler's book. Hitler wrote the book in jail. Following the failed Beer Hall Putsch, the title translated to My Struggle. The book reads as part autobiography, part manifesto regarding the future of Nazism as a political movement. In the book, Hitler discussed the importance of a racial hierarchy led by Aryans in Germany, and the importance for Germans to expand and grow their territory. According to the book, Hitler's expansion goal was Eastern Europe. Mein Kampf is often criticized for being poorly written, with many run-on sentences, although the book served as an important purpose to understanding Hitler's greater ambitions preluding to World War II, and specifically regarding the invasion of Poland, the annexation of Austria and Czechoslovakia. In the book, Hitler emphasized central rule with one leader, an authoritarian state. Argentina is in reference to the rumors that Adolf Hitler and other top Nazi brass fled to South America before the USSR captured Berlin. This is one of the most famous conspiracies in regards to Hitler, mainly stemming from the fact that no confirmed body of Hitler was ever recovered, as it was said to be doused in gasoline and set on fire, orders from Hitler himself to prevent the USSR from desecrating it. It is important to know, in terms of the escape theories, specifically regarding South America, several top Nazis did use rat lines to successfully escape, although none of the top Nazi brass that orbited Hitler did. Odds of Hitler actually escaping to South America are extremely low, in my estimation, based off Hitler's rapidly depleting health, combined with the fact that many of his top men, Goebbels, Goering, Speer, stayed in Germany and either committed suicide or were captured. Hitler survived many attempted assassinations, estimating around 40 in total, with the most famous one being Operation Valkyrie, coming in July of 1944, less than 1 year before Hitler would commit suicide. A bomb that was placed in a briefcase under a table that Hitler was sitting at exploded, killing 4 people. Since the meeting was held in wooden barracks and not the usual concrete bunker, the blast radius escaped the room. This dampened the explosion, allowing Hitler to survive. This was done late in the war as a rebellious action, as it became clear Nazi Germany was going to fall. The people behind it wanted Germany to negotiate an end and surrender, which Hitler was vehemently against. In 1939, Hitler survived another attempt due to fog in Munich. Hitler's original speaking time was cut short because of it, allowing him to leave the venue 13 minutes before a planted bomb exploded. In 1943, while Hitler was traveling by air, a bomb was planted inside the aircraft disguised as booze. It went the entire flight without detonating due to the bomb freezing because of the high altitude. Hitler was considered extremely lucky for not being assassinated after many close calls. The Wolf's Lair was the nickname given to Hitler's primary wartime headquarters on the Eastern Front, located in East Prussia, which is now a part of Poland. The headquarters opened in June of 1941, just before the start of Operation Barbarossa. Hitler spent much of World War II at this location, living for around 800 days within the headquarters from 1941 to 44, before retreating back to Berlin. This is where Hitler communicated many of his Eastern Front strategical decisions. The actual complex was designed specifically with security in mind, located within dense forests surrounded by camouflage. The buildings were made of reinforced concrete. The overall design was done at the explicit directive of Hitler, who was extremely worried and paranoid for his own personal safety. It became one of the safest places during World War II. Coincidentally enough, this is also where Operation Valkyrie happened. Nonetheless, the relative safetiness of it caused Hitler to spend much more time within the Wolf's Lair. It eventually was abandoned by Hitler in November of 1944 due to its location within the Eastern Front and the Soviet advance. Adolf Hitler was Austrian. He was born in the town of Brunau am Inn, located in Upper Austria. The country at the time of his birth in 1889 was known as Austria-Hungary. Austria and Germany have a long intertwining history. Throughout the 1800s, Austria and Prussia competed for the leadership over the German states. In 1871, Germany was unified, excluding Austria after the Austro-Prussian War. Hitler had Austrian citizenship until 1925. He was stateless until 1932 before gaining German citizenship. After World War I, Austria-Hungary collapsed, with many citizens wanting to unite with Germany. This was not allowed by the Allies that won the war at the time. Eventually, after Hitler took power, Austria was annexed by the German Reich in 1938, which was heavily applauded by many Austrian citizens as they viewed themselves as German. As World War II progressed, so did Hitler's drug usage. He was given many different cocktail mixtures from his personal doctor, Theodor Morell. Morell was his doctor from 1936 through 1945, living with Hitler inside his various residences. Much of Hitler's drug usage can be tracked from Morell's diary. Hitler did routinely receive amphetamines, sleeping pills, hormone injections, daily vitamin injections, and anti-gas chemicals. The drug usage began getting intense in 1942 to the point where Morell would treat Hitler multiple times a day, giving him up to 30 injections a week. Many of the top Nazi brass did not like Morell and viewed him as over-injecting Hitler and making Hitler too reliant on the drugs. Hitler's potential meth usage has been of much discussion post-war. He didn't use meth in the traditional sense that gets talked about today. However, he did take a pharmaceutical methamphetamine known as Pervitin. This drug is classified in the same chemical class as modern meth. It was known in Germany at the time as a stimulant to uplift mood and to keep a person energized, allowing one extreme long work periods. The drugs most certainly exacerbated Hitler's mass paranoia and anxiety. Blondi was the name of Adolf Hitler's dog. The dog was a female German Shepherd that was given to Hitler in 1941. It lived with Hitler consistently until both of their deaths in 1945. People around Hitler reported that he was, in most cases, kinder to the dog than even other humans within his inner circle, allowing it to sleep in his personal living quarters, something Eva Braun wasn't even doing. When the Soviet Union was closing in on Germany, Hitler ordered Blondi to be given a cyanide capsule. This was done to test the capsule's potency, as Hitler suspected they were defective, and also as a way to make sure the Soviet Union never got their hands on the dog, as her fate would have likely been very bad. The capsule worked, and Blondi died on April 29th, just one day before Hitler's suicide. Germania was a visionary, futuristic city, specifically a redesign of Berlin had Germany won World War II. The idea was to build the city into the world capital with a massive renovation of the north-south axis. Germania would have included buildings like the Volkshall, which would have been the centerpiece located beyond the Reichstag. This building would have had a massive dome with a potential capacity of around 150,000 people. Some of the projects Hitler planned may not have been possible due to the Berlin swamp-like soil. The renovation would have included large government buildings and monuments with a gigantic triumphal arch. The redesign would have included a new palace for Hitler as well. Due to the Nazis losing of World War II, virtually nothing was built outside of some test-bearing sites to test the soil composition. Wonder weapons, as they were known to Hitler, were advanced experimental weapons that were considered Germany's last chance as they fought on the defensive in the final years of the war. The V-2 rocket was relied on greatly by Hitler as the weaponry that could turn the war. It was considered the world's first long-range ballistic missile. This was extremely technologically advanced at the time. An unfortunate symptom of that was that the V-2 rocket was extremely inefficient. The Nazis also theorized a sun gun, described as a space mirror that would burn cities. This idea shows the level of desperation Germany had towards the end of the war. The Gustav cannon, a massive railgun that took over 1,000 men to operate, was also deployed late in the war. Only 2 were ever built, and they were extremely hard to transport, with only one seeing any military action. The Atlantic Wall was a non-continuous coastal defense system commissioned by Adolf Hitler in 1942 to protect Germany from an Allied Western invasion, emphasizing protection of the English Channel. The wall was mainly concrete fortified bunkers and pillboxes that hosted machine gun nests. The Atlantic Wall also contained beach obstacles to prevent Allies from landing. The defense barrier was built across many different countries, including France, Spain, Belgium, Netherlands, and more, with a total length around 200 miles. Construction continued for 3 years. Top Nazi military general Erwin Rommel patrolled the Atlantic Wall and was concerned about the weakness of the wall in northern France. The wall did end up failing as the Allies surprised Germany, landing in Normandy in an area that wasn't extremely fortified. It's kind of hard to call it a wall considering it was not fully connected, although it did hold up during certain points. The Enabling Act was the power that allowed Hitler to officially become a dictator. This was passed in March of 1933, weeks after Hitler became Chancellor of Germany. The act allowed Hitler the ability to make laws without needing the Reichstag. It also allowed Hitler to override the German constitution. This effectively created a one-party state. Many people point to the Reichstag fire that happened in February of 1933, less than a month before the passage of the Enabling Act, as a primary reason why Hitler was able to get the act, which needed 2/3 votes, through. The fire was blamed on a Dutch communist and caused significant political fallout that was capitalized on by the Nazi Party to limit speech due to what they deemed as a potential communist uprising. Later in life, Hitler became a vegetarian, in part because of his digestive problems. Nazi Germany in general did have strict laws against animal cruelty, which relates to Hitler's vegetarian nature. These laws are seen as forward-thinking, as many countries adopted similar policies in the decades to follow. It's reported Hitler hated looking at meat and blood. He became a strict vegetarian in the early 1940s. He did have a pretty large sweet tooth, though, enjoying desserts after dinner. Some dinners would go on for multiple hours, with Hitler deep into monologues. He enjoyed mashed potatoes, pasta, eggs, and other vegetables. Late in his life, there's been heavy speculation that Adolf Hitler developed Parkinson's disease, with symptoms being extreme in 1945. The final time Hitler visited the front during World War II, he was seen with his left hand noticeably shaking uncontrollably. The final video ever shot of Hitler above the Führer bunker shows the same thing. It also became harder for Hitler to walk, routinely using a cane in the later years of the war. The cause of Parkinson's was likely genetics in tandem with aging. Hitler was also under enormous stress, obviously, throughout the entire war. Theodor Morell noted that Hitler was treated in the early 1940s for something that resembled Parkinson's. The doctor never outright said he had the disease, but it's heavily implied. The last photo of Hitler is commonly believed to be somewhere within the Reich Chancellery garden above the Führer bunker on April 28, 1945, 2 days before his suicide. Hitler is seen overlooking damage to the Reich Chancellery with concrete debris visible in the background. He was reportedly standing with Julius Schwab. The debris created around Hitler likely included bomb craters from Allied bombing runs, as Berlin was a complete shell of itself at this point. It is a rare photo that was captured, as not often was Hitler photographed outside of propaganda purposes. There is also another photo that doesn't get talked about as much, but it was taken likely within minutes of the other one from a different angle. Nazi Germany famously hosted the 1936 Summer Olympic Games, featuring Adolf Hitler opening them. Germany dominated the overall medal count, but Jesse Owens individually earned the most gold medals, receiving 4. There's a famous story involving Owens and Hitler, with the idea of Hitler not congratulating or shaking Owens' hand after his victories. That story is not really true. The real story is that on the first day of the Olympics, Hitler shook hands with the winning athletes. They were mainly German. The Olympic Committee then told Hitler it was inappropriate for him to be shaking hands with just the German medalists, and if he wanted to shake their hands, he needed to shake the hands of every medalist. After that, Hitler decided not to shake anyone's hand that won a medal. There is a rumor that Hitler nodded at Owens from the crowd. Jesse Owens, later reflecting on the Olympics, said that it was not Hitler that snubbed him, But it was FDR that snubbed him, referring to the fact that Franklin Roosevelt didn't congratulate Jesse Owens on his return to the United States, despite the fact he won 4 gold medals. The final solution, or Holocaust as it's commonly known, was the Nazi plan to exterminate Jewish people. The phrase final solution is derived from the phrase Jewish problem, which was said by some Europeans for decades in relation to Jews in Europe. The genocidal policy itself was finalized in January of 1942, already 3 years into the war. Hitler himself wrote about Jews extensively in his book, calling them an existential threat to Germany, originally focusing on emigration, like plans to deport Jews to Madagascar, that never formalized. The final solution was carried out under Hitler, with the use of firing squads, gas chambers. Forced labor also contributed to many casualties. The Nazis established a network of concentration camps ranging from around 25 to 30 in total. 6 were known as extermination camps, including Auschwitz and Treblinka. All of the extermination camps were located in Poland. Hitler had an interesting and complicated relationship with the United Kingdom. On one hand, he greatly respected their global empire and ability to colonize countries thousands of miles away. On the other, the United Kingdom was a major thorn in Germany's side for a full takeover of mainland Europe. His views of the UK can be explained as him viewing Britain as a counterpart to Germany, with Hitler theorizing after Germany defeated the Soviet Union, them and the UK would be the 2 main global powers, both based in Europe. Hitler did not expect Britain to declare war on Germany immediately after the invasion of Poland. When it happened, Hitler wanted to negotiate peace with the UK and France to avoid a 2-front war, saying Germany didn't want westward expansion. In 1940, as Germany started invading and taking Western countries, Hitler again tried negotiating with Britain, saying they could keep their empire and navy. Winston Churchill rejected the peace offers, viewing Nazi Germany as untrustworthy and wanting to fight Nazi aggression in Europe. The Nero Decree was Adolf Hitler's formal request given on March 19, 1945, to Albert Speer, his lead architect, to destroy all remaining German infrastructure. It was an effort to deny the Soviet Union and Western allies any German resources. The order stated that all German transportation, production, and communications needs to be eliminated. This is known as a scorched earth policy, a strategy to try and eliminate potential usefulness of German resources by other countries. Albert Speer and many other German officers resisted the order, with Speer actively sabotaging it, saying that the order would wipe out Germany itself. The officials knew that if Germany was fully destroyed through this act, post-war cleanup would be impossible, as there were still millions of Germans living in the country. Once the order was given by Hitler, some German officers did initially follow through with destroying railways, bridges, and factories. However, because Albert Speer issued orders to delay the destruction, much of the infrastructure was spared. Both the Gustav Cannon massive railguns were purposefully destroyed by the Germans. It is known that Hitler was gifted 2 different giant globes, known as Columbus globes. These were extremely rare, oversized Earth globes produced by the Columbus Company, gifted to high-ranking Nazis. The Columbus Company factories were destroyed in 1943, leaving virtually no records. One globe Hitler was gifted sat in the new Reich Chancellery inside Hitler's personal office, which was a massive 3,800 square feet. The globe sat in the new Reich Chancellery as the Battle of Berlin was ongoing, with photos taken by the Soviet Union depicting it covered in dust. Hitler's other globe was reportedly at the Berghof, Hitler's mountain residence. It was supposedly recovered in 1945 and eventually sold in 2007 for $100,000. There are several other giant globes that have floated around post-war, with the owners of them claiming they were Hitler's globes. Due to virtually no archives from the Columbus Company, proper identification of Hitler's globes is virtually impossible. In tandem with the 1936 Summer Olympics, the Nazis also hosted the 1936 Winter Olympics. These Winter Olympics were held in Garmisch-Partenkirchen, a small town in Germany. Hitler visited the Winter Olympics, attending the opening ceremonies and games. The Winter Olympics were done in a very orderly way, almost as a test run for the Summer Games that would happen just a few months later. Nazi swastikas draped the streets and temporary buildings that were built specifically for the games. The games were used by the Nazis as a propaganda tool to show Germany's strength and order. Obviously, these games not nearly as famous as the summer ones, with many people not even knowing the Nazis not only hosted the Summer but also the Winter Olympics in 1936. The games involved unusual warm weather in the small winter town, which forced some events to be rescheduled. Hearing Hitler's normal conversation voice on recording is extremely rare, as he mainly projected a loud, stern, deep voice for propaganda purposes during his speeches. Hitler, however, was secretly recorded in 1942, discussing the current war situation. This is known as the Mannerheim recording. Hitler made a surprise visit to Finland to celebrate the 75th birthday of the Field Marshal Mannerheim. A secret recording was done after the ceremony, in which Hitler was discussing the current war situation. In this recording, Hitler spoke in a low, calmer manner. He spoke about the logistical problems Nazi Germany was running into, the insane Soviet tank production which the Nazis did not expect. He reflected on the past winters and admitted his troops suffered greatly as the Nazis were shocked by just how cold it got. He expressed frustration with the Lend Lease coming from the United States to support the Soviet Union. Mannerheim rarely spoke during this exchange, mainly listening. The conversation lasted around 30 minutes, with 11 minutes of recording recovered. Hitler loved desserts and had a very large sweet tooth. He enjoyed large amounts of candy and chocolate pastries throughout the day. His normal diet was extremely bland, and he would routinely sub out meals for constant carb-heavy snacks. The medications that Theodor Morell gave Hitler likely contributed to his desire for sweets. Towards the end of Hitler's life, he dealt with significant tooth decay, in part due to the amount of sweets he consumed. He relied on things like chocolate as a pick-me-up, as advisors would say it was his go-to if he felt fatigued. Generalplan Ost, which translates to General Plan for the East, served as the post-war German blueprint for the future of Eastern Europe. Assuming the Nazis won World War II, the plan included forced removals or exterminations of people living in the Baltic states, Poland, Ukraine, and Western Russia. The plan, which had several different drafts, insinuated the idea that many would be starved to death or participate in forced labor work if they were not removed. The idea was to open Eastern Europe up for Nazi Germany to expand. According to the plan, around 10 million Germans would settle in Eastern Europe. Hitler's view of Slavs being radically inferior to the Germanic people contributed heavily to this plan, along with his hatred of communism. In World War I, Hitler was temporarily blinded. This happened in 1918, towards the end of the war. Hitler was 29 at the time. He was exposed to mustard gas within a close proximity. This caused Hitler temporary blindness for multiple days. Hitler was also in the hospital recovering when Germany's surrender happened, calling it one of the most devastating moments of his life. Due to the blindness, the hospital stay, and the German defeat, Hitler considered this time a rebirth for himself as he suffered an emotional traumatic breakdown. The incident with mustard gas also shaped Hitler's view on chemical warfare, deeming it extremely dangerous and shying away from using it during World War II, even when top generals recommended it. Hitler often wore reading glasses. This was completely concealed from the general public for propaganda purposes. Hitler and the Nazis viewed glasses as making him look older and weaker. He was not to be photographed with them on. He had issues reading documents up close. He would often try to conceal his eyesight when company was around, opting to use glasses mostly in complete privacy. Like most people, Hitler's eyesight got worse the more he aged, and by 1945, Hitler was openly wearing glasses inside the Führer bunker, not caring much about his image at this point. There were also very few photographs ever taken of Hitler inside of the Führer bunker, as it was extremely cramped. The propaganda portrayal would be a far cry from the massive rallies the Nazis used to host. Hitler and the Nazi Party were extremely against smoking. The regime executed a massive anti-smoking campaign, with Hitler in the mid-1930s saying he wanted a smoke-free Reich. Germany invested heavily in understanding the effects of tobacco on lungs, linking smoking to cancer, and proving that it can reduce life expectancy. This investment led to heavy propaganda encouraging a smokeless society. This was well before many of the other first world countries adopted similar policies. There were heavy taxes on tobacco, and smoking in public was banned. However, towards the end of the war, the laws on smoking began to get lax as soldiers enjoyed cigarettes. The task of warfare became much more important. Geli Raubal had a very close relationship with Hitler. She was the daughter to Hitler's half-sister, making her Hitler's half-niece. Hitler became her guardian when she was a teenager, living with him in his apartment in Munich. Hitler developed a very close relationship with her, although the exact details on the relationship type are unknown. It is said that Hitler grew controlling and suffocating over Geli, causing a rift in their relationship. In 1931, at just 23 years old, Raubal was found dead inside Hitler's apartment in Munich. This was ruled a suicide, with speculation surrounding Hitler due to his proximity to Raubal. The death elicited a serious reaction from Hitler, with him reportedly being depressed for months after the suicide. For the rest of his life, Hitler rarely ever brought up Raubal's name. He did keep a picture of her amongst his personal items until he died. Until his death, and it is said that Eva Braun was jealous of Raubal's relationship with Hitler, even though Raubal was long dead.